A recent court matter has ignited a wider national conversation about divorce, blended families and the financial obligations that can arise when a man steps into a parental role. In a recent case reported by Times Live, a husband who had not adopted his former wife's 2 children was nevertheless ordered in interim divorce proceedings to keep paying significant support, including 40,000 rand a month, medical aid and medical costs, up to 35,000 rand a month towards rent, and 1 million rand towards legal costs. The High Court did not overturn that order, largely because it was a Rule 43 interim order, and those orders are generally not appealable in the ordinary course. In a country where blended families are common, this case raises difficult questions about fairness, intention, financial exposure, and the line between emotional commitment and legal duty. Fiduciary specialist Zola Mbata joins me live. Zola, always good to speak to you. Now, let us begin with a legal position. Does this case mean a stepfather automatically has a duty to maintain stepchildren, or was this a very fact-specific ruling based on the role this man had played?
It's always lovely talking to you, Puti. That's very correct. This is a very unique circumstance. It does not immediately trigger an automatic responsibility. However, in 2010, a similar case was heard where the judgment was made that is also similar. And the reason for this is when a step-parent takes on the duties of parenting a stepchild to a point where they cross over and make legal obligations and legal promises. This comes in the form of school forms that are filled in where they would promise that they would pay the school fees. Now, in this instance, as you mentioned earlier, it's a Rule 43, which means it's interim maintenance while the divorce is in court. So the courts are saying you can't just cut completely the lifestyle the children were living just because right now you're in the middle of the divorce as spouses. Children cannot suffer. It's in line with the Children's Act.
So from a man's perspective, where is the line between stepping up out of love and stepping into a legal obligation?
Right now, we all know the high numbers of single parents, particularly in the communities. And at this point, it's going to cause anxiety, especially for men as providers, that now it's saying, this case is saying, or even the granting of the Rule 43 interim maintenance is saying, once I act in good faith and take care of the children that my wife came with, I'm now getting legally obligated without a legal adoption. So that gray area is going to cause a bit of anxiety. And it might even have the impact of, decreasing the number of people who are getting married, which is a concern.
Is the area actually grey? Because the Western Cape High Court was pretty clear, right, in its own findings. So is it actually grey? Or is it assumed that once you get into a position where your partner comes in and she has a couple of children or any number of children, the obligation extends beyond the union between the two?
That definitely would be under dependency. You'll remember we spoke about Section 37C of the Pension Fund Act, where your partner's children, whether they're yours biologically or not, can claim from your pension because they depend on you financially. So once you do create dependency as a parent, then the law follows suit and financial obligations of dependency follow. So basically, if it goes down to the human and sentimental part of it, you have to make the decision of the person you're marrying, understanding that these are the possibilities. However, you may be able to, just when you're doing what is called an antenuptial contract, regulating your marriage, your marital regime using that contract, you may possibly enter the specific words. You may not claim maintenance from each other should we get in a divorce. And then, of course, we just live by love and hope. So, but based on that and the fact that each case is determined by its own facts, that's why I would say it does create a bit of a gray area. But I fully understand what you're saying.
So for men that are watching right now, is a real lesson here that intention is not enough and that the role you live out in practice can carry consequences later?
Consequences would make you seem as if you're going to be punished for Ubuntu, basically going to be punished for acting good. But of course, that's exactly how it's playing out and it's feeling from a feeling perspective.
This would seem as a a punishment of sorts. Excuse me, because these two boys in question have their own father, right, who has been paying a measure of maintenance, but he wasn't as well off as the stepfather for that season. So this man came into the relationship with the best of intentions, one would assume, but post that, he is then lumped with the responsibility of taking care of these kids beyond his relationship with their mother.
Oh, well, remember, this is a Rule 43 judgment, so I wouldn't compare it with a permanent judgment. In this instance, it's the behavior of parents during their divorce. And if it's harming the kids, of course, the courts have the obligation to follow the Children's Act and place them in a manner where they're not being harmed, because they also didn't ask for that certain lifestyle themselves. So if you were to be picking victims, in that instance, both the men and the children are victims. In that case, we then wonder, why did the mom put in this application to begin with? She has her own reasons. So, but I fully understand what you mean by it. It also concerns me as a legal practitioner, the impact on the social aspect of our life, especially taking into consideration the current status anyway of relationships within our communities. So it does worry, but I think we should literally keep an eye on this matter and see what the final decision on the maintenance is. But outside of all the scope of this one particular family, it is our duty as families, when we're entering into unions such as marriage, which has multiple legal obligations, to plan. You literally have to do marriage planning, run all scenarios and plan for them. Exclude them if you don't want to go through them. Include them if that person that you're marrying is someone you want to go through those things for. And all of that will allow you to live comfortably, knowing that you've got some controls in place.
So Zola, speaking of protection, let's talk about how men in this situation, or men who are potentially looking to get into a blended family, can protect themselves. And I say protection because for a lot of men, they feel that their obligation is limited to the time that they are with the kid's mother. So beyond this, what sort of parameters, legal parameters exist to ensure that you are, if you are not willing, then forced to look after these children beyond, or if that relationship does come to an end?
Well, firstly, I wouldn't say it's just men only. It's just that in this case, it was a man. If in an instance in the marriage where the woman is financially more capable than the man and she's taking care of her stepchildren, the same obligation. So everyone who's entering into the marriage must really make it a point. I can't emphasize estate planning enough. I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record at this point, but it's so important for me to keep repeating it. If you're going to change your life in any shape or form, you must do estate planning. How does the decision you're making in your personal life impact your estate? So men generally are very good at doing estate planning. It's just that you have to be intentional about it and strategic. It has to include financial planning as well. You have to make use of tools such as family trusts to put away your assets with the correct beneficiaries. And the other day I made a very, I think that content went very viral based on what I was saying in it, which was, as a biological parent, it is your obligation to actually do estate planning for your biological children first. And then the surplus, you can then help your partner with the children that they have with someone else. It's very important to do estate planning for your children. You must prioritize your children. That's why the courts are doing it. They are prioritizing children broad. I'm saying each parent must prioritize their biological child in terms of estate planning and then help out with their partner's children.
Well, easier said than done, right? But how should men in blended families think about fairness, especially where the biological father is still alive, involved and contributing? I mean, in this instance, the biological father is paying, I think the amount that I read could have been anything between 7,000 and 10,000 rand, and the stepfather for a season is now having to pay maybe 60,000, 70,000 rand a month.
Yeah, the principle of fairness there, it does become a bit of a concern. But like I said, you really have to look at the facts, at the set of facts of each case, and try and avoid putting an umbrella reaction to circumstances, because the next case may not be the exact same decision. That's why we need to keep an eye on this case so that we determine how far it's going. But actually just study it further. And then we must obviously go ahead and do that planning as discussed earlier.
Zola, does a judgment like this risk making some men more hesitant to fully embrace their partner's children? And if so, How do we protect children without discouraging commitment?
Well, we definitely do want commitment. I mean, there's obviously positives to commitment in that way, and more important than anything, like I said about that content, right? Because I'm data sourcing from it. A lot of men, of course, were saying this is why in the cultural days women were required to leave their children at home and go into a marriage without children and focus on the children of that marriage, including her husband's children that aren't hers. And of course, that caused childhood trauma. And then in the same token, these children, the same men are saying it's very advisable to just marry a woman without children. However, you find that most of the men that are saying this have made children with other women, and yet they're not marrying those women. And so there's a lot of thinking that has to come into here. And in any case, there's this social change in our behavior that needs to take place. I'm not sure if it's from a religious perspective, where you really have to intentionally only have children once you're married. But what I know is we can't have a group of children that are growing up in broken families. They're not necessarily deserving to grow up in broken families because we are ununderstanding of the legal system. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to do estate planning, and we really have to look into what is it that needs to change a bit. Maybe it's just having these children outside of commitment. Maybe that needs to stop. All I know is that the courts are intent on protecting children's interest, and I think that's a very good thing.
So Zola, you've talked about some form of analysis from men out there. Have you at all had any conversations or picked up on what the women folk are thinking?
Yes, of course, the woman equally commented as well. I find that they're very disappointed in this instance, and I don't know if I disagree with them. With the mother now, who has really approached this, her relationships with her previous husband or partner, and this now ex-husband-to-be from a greed perspective, almost as if they're saying, really, doing this is really complicating the lives of other women in that way. However, her duty is not towards other women. Her duty legally is towards her children. If she's assessing that my children they've gotten used to this life, to take away that life from them, like this also is something she's trying to protect her children from. So again, from an objective perspective, we don't know her set of facts. However, it isn't in our favor for judgments of this nature, especially if they continue, because of the nature of blended families that we currently in.
Certainly a lot of food for thought, Zola, but I appreciate your time speaking to us around the court case from the Western Cape, where a man has been ordered by the court to financially support his stepchildren after the divorce.